Hello, my name is Michael Driscoll, and in this talk, I will be telling you about Pillow, image processing with Python. Basically, the whole point of this talk is to give an overview of Pillow and how you can use it to process images. So Pillow is the friendly fork of the Python imaging library, or PIL. That came out way back in Python 2, or probably, maybe even earlier than that. And for whatever reason, the maintainers decided that they wouldn't continue development of that package. So Pillow came along and they forked it, the people behind Pillow did, and they decided that they would support Python 3 and Python 2, and it ended up being the de facto Python imaging library because the other guys kind of dropped it. So in this talk, I'm going to show you how to use Pillow. It's been around for at least a decade, if not longer. I think it's actually closer to 2 now. Anyway, in this particular talk, I'm going to talk about opening images, extracting image information, cropping, rotating, image enhancement, drawing. I don't have it on here, but I'll probably cover some image ops, which are image operations that are also included with Pillow, and adding a GUI. Let's get started. So first of all, let's learn how to open an image with Pillow. So the idea here is to take Pillow and import the image module. So because Pillow was supposed to be a fork of the Python imaging library, you still use that same syntax to import from. So from PIL, import image. Then to open it, you just do image.open and the path to the file that you want to open. In this case, I'm going to open up a picture of some flowers I took a while ago. So if we run this code, it will open it up in the system viewer that you have installed on your computer. Image.show takes a title parameter, so you could set the title of the application that opens, but I've noticed that doesn't work on my Mac. So I think it does work on Windows and Linux, though. It really depends on what your default image viewer is and whether it will accept that title argument or not. All right. You can also open images using Python's with statement in Pillow. So in that case, you just do with image.open as image and then image.show. And it does the exact same thing as the other code did, but it uses the context manager, which may simplify your code a little bit. Let's talk about converting an image. So Pillow supports, I believe, around 40 or more different image formats, dozens at least. And you can convert from one format to another using Pillow, which is awesome. In this example, I convert a JPEG into a PNG file. I use pathlib, which is something that's included with Python, to grab the suffix, so just to print out what we're converting from and to. And then I open it up and I just save it. And Pillow will look at the suffix automatically and determine what it should do. So if I run this code, there's no output other than it's converting from JPEG to PNG. But if you go over here, and we just make this a little bit bigger, you can see there's flowers.jpg, and it's 356 kilobytes, but flowers.png is 2.59 megabytes. You might be wondering, what in the world? That increased enormously in file size. Well, that's because JPEGs are a lossy format, and PNGs are not as lossy, basically. It's a little bit confusing, but basically what you're doing, in a way, is uncompressing the JPEG into a different format. And in the case of PNG, it just increases the file size quite a bit. So keep that in mind in case you're wanting to convert a lot of files, because you could end up potentially increasing your hard drive used up space quite a bit doing this conversion, especially if you have thousands of files like I do. Okay, so let's talk about saving with compression. Pillow lets you save with different quality amounts. Here I'm going to convert or compress, so to speak, the blue flower photo that I have. In this case, I'm going to set the quality to 85, and I'm going to say to optimize it to true, because that's what I've read is recommended. So if we run this code, again, we don't have any output other than the file. But if we go over here and look at blue files, you'll see that the original file size was 3.13, and now it's 2.01. So by using that quality setting of 85, we were able to reduce it by almost 30% or more. So you can play around with that and see Does the output look good enough? Does this compressed version still provide enough quality or not? And just kind of play with that and see what you think. All right, let's talk about getting the XF data from an image. XF stands for Exchangeable Image File Format, and it's a standard used by many camera manufacturers, both for still cameras and video cameras. And it will store this metadata inside the image or video itself, and it will tell you, the lighting conditions, your focal length, compression, color type, all kinds of different stuff. And if you're using like your cell phone, then your cell phone will can record geo coordinates of the photos when they're taken. So that can also be in the XF if you didn't know about that. That's really cool, and then you can geotag, your images if you want. Okay, so to get access to that XF data, you just import XF tags from Pillow, and I'm just going to rename it tags so I don't have to type as much. Then you call getXF, and then you loop over it and you basically decode the tags. So I think if you just look at the getXF information, it's kind of hard to read. And most of the time when you look up how to actually get it out, including in the documentation, it recommends doing tags.get, tag, to kind of decode it and make it more human readable. Now, there is a slight problem that when you run this code, first of all, you get a ton of output. So we have all kinds of output here. But the real problem is that a lot of it is not human readable because a big chunk of that information is basically byte encoded, your image in a byte encoded text. So to make things a little bit easier to read, I just kind of grab the stuff that I care about out of there. And then this isn't everything, but this is a lot of the components you'd probably be interested in. So you can look in there and you can see when it was taken. You can see brightness and exposure and aperture and flash and all kinds of stuff, make and model of the camera. And, you can use that information however you want. You could parse it and then, automatically have your files sorted using Python. Have it read when it was originally taken and file them that way. Or if you have the geotag, you could use that information to rearrange your photo database, so to speak, and put everything, that you took in New York into a New York folder, and everything you took in California in a California folder, however you want to do that. Pillow supports many common operations with photos, like cropping. If you'd like to crop a photo, you just do image.crop, and you pass in a 4-tuple. And by a 4-tuple, I mean it's 4 numbers in a tuple or tuple. The first 2 numbers are the first XY coordinates, so 302 pixels from the left, 101 pixels from the top is the first coordinate, and then the second coordinate is 910 pixels from the left, 574 from the top. And what that does is it will take those 2 coordinates and create a rectangle or a cropping area to crop out the image. So if we go look at this, I have a green mantis photo in here. I took this lovely little guy a year or 2 ago, and I want to crop out his head, so I can look at his head for some reason. So if I run this, it will try to crop out the rest of the photo. And, this took some trial and error to get it right. But you can also cheat by, opening the image in an editor like GIMP, and then you can figure out where you want to crop. This is probably most useful in like a studio environment where you're going to be taking photographs with a tripod, and the lighting conditions are going to be the same, and the people are going to sit in the same spots. So if you do need to crop for some reason, you could do a batch crop job with Pillow, and that'd be really awesome because you can just say crop, at these 2 X coordinates, and it could go through 1,000 photos and crop it for you in a few seconds, which is a lot easier to do than doing it yourself. All right, let's learn a little bit about rotating photos. So to rotate a photo, you take the image object and you just call .rotate. And then you pass it the degrees to rotate. I did 90 degrees here, but Pillow really doesn't care. You can pass it any number of degrees and it will still rotate it. So let's take his dragonfly and it'll rotate the picture. So here he's rotated 90 degrees. We could go back in here and change this to like 45 and run it again. And it's going to make it kind of cattywampus there. It turned the picture and now you've got all this black in the corners, which you may not want. That's one reason why you might want to rotate at 90-degree intervals, so like 90 degrees, 180, 270, that sort of thing. I'll leave that up to you to play with though. All right, let's talk about resizing photos with Pillow. So to resize a photo, you can just call resize and pass it the new size that you want to do. There's a lot of extraneous code here because I wanted to print out the original width and height of the photo that I was passing in, and then the new width and height that I set it to, just to kind of show that, hey, this code is doing what I think it's doing. So in this case, I'm going to use this photo from Pilot Knob, which is a park here in Iowa, and this is kind of what it looks like. That's the original photo. So if we go ahead and run this, it's going to show it, and you can see it's kind of gotten squished. So the problem with the resize method in Pillow is that it doesn't care about aspect ratios. And so it's going to mess it up for you unless you do that calculation yourself. So there is a way to fix that, and I put it under here, Scaling Photos. And the way to do that is to call image.thumbnail instead. So let's look at this. The main thing to note here is that I'm just trying to make it super easy for myself, really. I'm going to pass in width or height or nothing, and I want this code to work in those different reasons. You know, why would I want to do this? So if I want to pass in just a width, I want it to only be this maximum width or this maximum height. But I don't want to always necessarily set both of them. Now we can simplify this code and just delete this whole block that I have highlighted, and it would probably work pretty much correctly because I just have to change a couple of things. But because I have made it more flexible, I can just set the width or the height, and it'll resize appropriately because it will grab the actual width or height and pop that in there if I skip one, basically. Anyway, if you run this code, it's going to show the image has been resized, but you can't really tell without actually looking at the context. So let's see, I think I called this scaled. Let's check. Zoom this out. Yeah, I called it scaled. So let's go back over here. We have scaled and Pilot Knob. So the original Pilot Knob is 334 kilobytes and the scaled version is 68.2. So you could scale, and then you could also change the compression and get some pretty nice small images from the original with Pillow. And you could do this in a batch process if you wanted to. All right, let's talk about enhancing photos with Image Enhance. Image Enhance supports changing the contrast, color, sharpness, and brightness levels. I'm only going to show 2 of these out of the 4 because it basically works the same way in all 4 of these. They all have the same interface. So here we're going to change the contrast. To change the contrast, you call imageenhance.contrast and pass it the image object. Then you use an enhance factor to be applied to the image. So in this case, I'm going to use 2.5. And we're going to use a Madison County bridge that I took a while ago. Here's what it looks like. Now we're going to change its contrast using an enhancement factor of 2.5. And you can see that really kind of blows out the highlights by changing the contrast that much. So contrast, or actually the enhancement factor itself, can start at 0.0 and go up to whatever you want. But in practice, what I have found just playing around with this library is that you really don't want to go even above 4 as your enhancement factor because it just changes the picture too drastically in most cases. So you can just play with the float numbers from 0 to 4 and you can get pretty drastic changes and maybe get what you want out of it. Let's go on to enhancing color. Now this one, it's still using the same exact syntax except instead of contrast you're calling color. But you still use an enhancement factor. And I'm just going to use this beetle. So I found this beetle in my backyard. It's a soldier beetle. And I want to enhance that photo. So if you do 0.0, it will actually kind of grayscale the image when you run this code. You can change it to like 2 and run it again. And it will kind of change the color a little bit. So, if you look at this and we go back to the original beetle, let's see if I can find him again. Let's see, Beetle Enhanced, Goldenrod, there he is. So there's that guy, and there's the black and white version, and then you've got this version, and you can see the color has been enhanced. It pops more, basically. So you can play around with those different values and make it look however you want, really. So, give that a try. It's fun. And playing with brightness is fun too. Sharpness is good if you have good to some degree, but it's really hard to tell what's going on unless you really sharpen the photo. So that's why I'm skipping sharpening here. Okay, let's talk about drawing. So I'm going to show you how to draw shapes and text. Pillow supports a lot of different shapes. In this case, we're going to draw multiple lines. To use Image Draw, you just import the Image Draw module, and then after you open up and create an image object, you pass that image object to imagedraw.draw, and now you can kind of draw on top of your image. In this case, I'm going to loop over a range from 0 to 100 in 20 pixel increments. And what it's going to do is it's going to draw multiple lines with a width of 5 pixels and a random color chosen from this list. So let's see, if we run this code, it'll run pretty quickly, and it'll take the zero position and basically draw them out at different angles. And we could play with this and change the width and rerun it, and you can see it kind of overlaps a little bit. We could change the gap and make this gap bigger. Let's say 25. Can't really tell because I upped the width. So let's change this back to 5 and rerun that. You can kind of see how it just changes things, and you can just kind of play around with this code and make it do lots of different things. But that's how you draw, and it works quite nicely. So let's go ahead and learn how to draw a rectangle. So here we're doing something new. We're going to create our own image instead of loading one. To do that, you do image.new. Tell it what format to use, RGB in this case. It's going to be a 400 by 400 picture with the background color being blue. Then we want to create a drawing context, and we're going to draw a rectangle. We're actually going to draw 2 rectangles. One will be filled with a red background, one will have a green background with a yellow outline, and the outline width will be 3 pixels. So if we run this code, you can see that it does everything the way we told it to. And you can go play with this, change the width, change the positioning of the rectangles, and just see, does this work the way I want it to? Okay, let's learn a little bit about drawing text. So to draw text, you use image.draw.draw, and you tell it where to draw at. So this is the point that you want to start drawing at. This is the second point. So basically what I'm saying is start drawing at 10 from the top, 10 over 25 from the top. So this should be stacked right on top of each other when you run this code. And when you do, you can see that you have a nice little square with some drawings in it. The biggest problem I have with this is that it tends to be kind of pixelated. You can fix this by drawing bigger. You can save the image with a higher quality to make it not so pixelated. Or you could save it as a PNG, and that would also make it less pixelated. If you have a TrueType font that you'd rather draw on your images, Pillow's got you back there too. So to do that, you import image font into imagefont.truetype and the path to a TrueType font. Jadoli, or Godoli, I'm not sure how you pronounce this, is a free open source font, a TrueType font you can download. So I grabbed it, and I'm going to have it draw on this picture that I took at the Dallas Arboretum. So if we run this code, it will loop over and basically write the same text over and over again with different font sizes. And you can see that's exactly what it does. And it looks pretty good overall. Again, if you zoom in a little bit, you can see there's like a little bit of pixelization going on right around the letters. And again, I've been told by the Pillow maintainers that to fix that issue, you'd have to save it a higher quality because it defaults to 75% or 75 as your quality setting when you don't specify, or you can save it as a PNG and it should look better. Okay, let's talk about image operations. There are a ton of them. ImageOps maintains a number of ready-made image processing operations. They say it's experimental, but if you look through the documentation, you'll see that most of those have been there for a very, very long time. Anyway, like I said, there's a ton of them. They have a colorize, deform, equalize, fit, grayscale, invert, mirror, posturize, solarize. You can do a lot of fun things with the ImageOps module. I have some demos I can run through over in my book. So I wrote a book on this called Pillow Image Processing with Python, and in it I have a ton of different demos of using ImageOps and all the other things that I've been talking about in this presentation, plus a lot more. So anyway, let's see. Let's pick. I kind of like posturize, so let's do invert. So in this case, we're going to take a ducklings photo, which is actually quite nice. Let me go find it very quick. So if we go to ImageOps, we're going to use this nice ducklings photo. I took it last year, and we're going to invert it. So if we run this code, it'll take that picture and it'll invert the ducks. So now we have the ducklings inverted. And that's just a really simple thing you can do. You can just play around and invert stuff. And if you have some pictures that are mostly black and you want to print them out on your computer, you could invert the colors so that you don't waste so much ink when you go to print it. That's one obvious thing you could do with this particular function. But anyway, there's a ton of stuff like that. You can mirror, you can add padding around the images, kind of create a border on your image, so to speak. And you just play around with that stuff. There's a ton of them. All of those code examples are open source. The book is not, but my code is open source, and you can find it on GitHub/Driscollus, which is at the beginning of this presentation, but I'll include it in the links below too. All right, let's talk about adding a GUI. So let's say you want to do some of this stuff, but you don't want to keep running the code and testing and seeing if you have it just right. That's something I got kind of tired of too. I'm trying to crop something and I kind of have to guess, did I grab the right coordinates or not? Well, you can, or if I wanted to go through all the different brightness settings or whatever settings, it's kind of a pain because you got to keep editing the code and then rerunning it and resaving it and then reverting it until you find what you want to do. So what I ended up doing is I ended up creating GUIs using PySimple GUI. So I'm not going to write the whole code out. I'm just going to talk about it. In this case, we import PySimple GUI. I import the different functions that you want to use in my GUI. And these are the effects that I'm going to make available to myself. So normal, auto contrast, equalize, fit, flip, mirror, negative, posturize, and solarize. If we go down here, this is the main code that you want to look at for, hold on, this is the main code that you want to look at. This defines your GUI. So it's only going to have a couple of widgets on there: combo box, text, button, the main window, and then it's going to call these different things. And it calls, and the main one we really care about is applying the effect. So it's going to call, and it's going to use these functions here, and basically just call that function with the image and apply it as a PNG. So if we run this code, we get this nice little GUI. And I'm just going to show you what it does. So let's browse, let's grab this monarch and open it up. And so we load this image up, and then we can choose different things. Like if we want to create a negative image, we can do that. Or if we want to mirror it, we can mirror it. Or so you can run posturize. And in this case, I've got something messed up. But, that's basically how that works. And you can just kind of play with that, and you can quickly try out different things with that code. I have similar things for drawing. So if we go up here to my drawing GUI, it lets you basically play around with different things. So let's see. I don't have that quite set up right. Let's go down here. And we will set this to 550. There we go. So let's go find an image like that caterpillar again, and we'll open that up. And so now this image has a circle or an ellipse drawn on it. We can change that to a rectangle. We could change its outline so that it has like aquamarine, which you can't see that well. So let's go change some things. Yeah, I want to make this a little bit bigger. So let's go ahead and make this 500 by 550. All right, let's go back and load that monarch back up. Load. Okay. Let's make the width 20, and we'll give ourselves an aquamarine color. And you can see how that just like gives you a really quick and dirty way to test out different settings. You know, is this a big enough outline? Do I want it to be a black outline? You know, do I want it to be another color? And do I want the fill to be a different color? I must have chosen the wrong thing. There we go. So like blue or black or what have you. Okay, so anyway, that's how that works. Let's go back to my code. I wanted to show one other thing. So if we go back to like the enhancing, I have an enhancing GUI, which is kind of cool. Let's run that quick. So we'll load up an image. We'll just keep playing with that caterpillar because it makes things more consistent. And we can just change different things like brightness is set to 2.0. We can just kind of drag the slider around and you can see, you know, what does it do? How does it change the picture? You know, 0.0 is black and white. I believe 1.0 is basically the same as original. And then anything above that will just basically saturate it more. You play with contrast. You can really mess with the contrast on these things and make it do different things. It's kind of fun. And then of course you have sharpness. And sharpness, as I was saying, it's hard to tell, and I need a bigger example. But you can kind of see, if you're watching closely, you can see that stuff is starting to get sharp more and more, kind of in focus almost. You kind of see a little bit more detail in the leaves, and maybe even in the caterpillar. So anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.